1 second. Okay, now you can start.
Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee on September 17th, 2020. We'll start with roll call.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Moore?
Here.
Mayor Reed?
Here.
Counselor Barbell?
Here.
Counselor, oh, I said that right. Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor, I said that already. Counselor Brody?
Here.
And Counselor McFarland.
Okay, we have several items to move to the agenda today. A couple of them I'd like to talk about are item number 5 on the finance agenda. Let's see, that is yes, item number 5, and let's see, that is item E on the regular agenda. So, after much discussion today with our managers and among ourselves, we would like to hold off on moving this item to the regular agenda tonight. For a number of reasons. We discovered in our discussion with our managers that there are some unanswered questions, and we'd like to make sure we take care of those before we go any further. Jeff and Ira have been in on this conversation from the start, so is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I think so. No, I just think it's time to remove, and we'll continue the conversation that you started today.
Okay. Jeff, anything?
I agree.
Okay. So I'm gonna make a motion that this item be removed from today's regular agenda.
Well, without putting it on today's regular agenda, it's not on there, right?
Right.
Well, we have to, well, it is until we take it up. It isn't on here.
Right, well, it's on printed wise, but you have to move items from this agenda to the other one, so.
Yeah, he's just saying he's
We're
not
gonna
gonna move that item.
exclude item number 5.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like
That's
to make a
right.
motion to remove item 5 from being moved to the agenda.
A variation on that, just purely a procedural option would be for the counselor who sponsored it to withdraw that, and they can do that unilaterally.
Okay.
So if you just want to say, I withdraw this item, that's the same consequence.
Okay, that was Counselor Barbell.
It was?
Yes.
Then I move to withdraw the item.
It's not even a movement, it's, I withdraw this item.
I withdraw the item.
Okay, thank you, Dean, for that point. Appreciate that. So that leaves also another item I want to talk about, but I do want to move that to the regular meeting time, and that is item number 6, or item number F on the regular agenda. That is a request from the Common Council to encourage the mayor to present a revised budget for 2021 prior to October 8th, providing that the 2021 general fund budget be reduced by at least 10% overall, with reductions in wages and salaries primarily through retirements, and that total no more than 5% of the general fund budget. We have discussed this almost continuously for the past week or so. That is Councilor Moore, Councilor Barbell, myself, and Mayor Reed. And we talked about, well, should we try to reach a dollar figure, or should we perhaps try to reach a percent of the entire general fund to reduce expenses for 2021, thereby balancing our budget and also delivering a tax cut to our taxpayers. So that is the hope, that is the reason that I'm recommending that we return the budget to the mayor and ask him if he can do this for us. Are there any questions or comments about that?
Yes, I do have a number of questions. Oh, I'm sorry, were you, go ahead.
No, you go first.
No, go ahead.
I'm just confused as to what happened. Last time I heard through our Chamberlain, our deficit was less than 400,000,
Yeah,
That's for 2020.
2020.
This is about 2021.
So going forward.
Correct. We're talking about revising the mayor's budget that was already adopted or ratified, or whatever you want to call it, on June 25th, and changing it by $2,357,000.
So changing the overall budget for 2021 by a dollar figure of 2 million. Is that what you're saying, Richard?
2.4 million.
2.4.
rounded. It's 10% of the expense budget. And I guess if half of that was to come out of salaries, that's 1.2 million from salaries and 1.2 million from expenditures. At least that's what the numbers tell me.
Why are we doing this? Is there a budget emergency that requires this, or can somebody answer
we
that for me?
anticipate that in 2021, we may quite possibly have significant reductions in state aid. If the signals that we're receiving from Albany are correct, and if they continue, there will be significant cuts to state aid next year. And that results from the federal government not giving municipalities any assistance in this time of crisis.
Is that the AIM funding that we've been talking about?
AIM funding, yes it is, Elizabeth. So we just want to be prepared for the worst. It may not happen, and that would be a good thing, but we do want to be prepared for the worst. We want a balanced budget next year, and we want to deliver a tax cut to our taxpayers during this time of pandemic, when many of them may be unemployed and in great need.
So the tax cut you want to provide in this 2021 budget, is that a 10% tax cut?
That is approximately a 14% tax cut. That will bring our tax rate down below $10 per year and make Plattsburgh competitive with cities such as Watertown and Glens Falls.
So does that 14% account for calculated inflation? Like what are you saying is the anticipated inflation, and how does that factor into this decision?
Well, a tax cut is a percentage, you know, and a proposed dollar figure removed from the general fund. If inflation increases, that'll put pressure on the general fund, and we might find ourselves cutting even more. If inflation, as it's doing currently, remains stable and the same, then that pressure wouldn't be there on the general fund.
What is the inflation rate calculated in the current budget for 2021? Is it 2%?
I believe it's
Richard?
1.5.
I don't recall what the mayor used there.
I thought it was 2%.
I've got it right here. It is for 2021, actually it's 0.
So how does that change things, Richard? Well, you're saying a 0% inflation, but
It's not possible.
yeah, that's not possible, right? What is our typical inflation per year, like 1%,
I think
2%?
it's been about 1.5
Yeah.
in the last 2 years.
That's
based on the
correct.
CPI analysis we do.
And when we prepared the budget, aren't all our payrolls increased by the expected wage contract adjustments for the following year?
Just for contracts that are already in place, not for
Right.
any that haven't been. That's correct.
Right, right.
So we have a couple of outstanding contracts. We have police and AFSCME. Any other outstandings?
Police,
Just police and AFSCME?
Yes.
And have those already been factored into the 2021 budget?
no, I would expect no resolution from at least one of them next year, maybe from both of them.
No, but is there money in the 2021 budget budgeted?
In just in case.
Just, yes. So that's already in the budget for 2021, right, Richard?
$1,001,000, yes. And I think that's about 200,000 too high, based on the numbers I went back and did for 4 years of police and 3 years, 2.5 years of ASME, using 1.5%.
Okay, so my,
increases.
oh, I'm sorry, Richard.
For, you know, the recent increases, so who knows how they're gonna come in, but if it's interest arbitration on the police, matter, they can't decide more than 2 years in an interest arbitration anyway, so they wouldn't decide in all 4 years to hit next year's numbers.
So,
But anyway, I got about.
I did it again to you, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I talk too much.
No, not at all. I'm just used to throwing elbows. We don't usually do it this way. When the mayor gives his budget in July, it's up to departments to start to shape their departmental budgets. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we not just allowing the normal budget process to happen? So for example, Jeff and I haven't met at all about infrastructure. Ira and I still have a lot more talking to do before we decide what we're gonna do about police and fire and code enforcement. I was talking to Patrick earlier. I asked him, I said, have you tackled the MLD budget or the library? I mean, there are still a lot of unsaid conversations right now, and I don't understand why we're doing it this way instead of sending this all back to committees.
The finance committee has determined that it would be advantageous to return the budget to the mayor and have him rework it with the parameters that we've provided him. We believe this is a better solution. The budget will be returned to the council on October 8th, and then we can begin our deliberations and make the additional cuts or increases.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Elizabeth, the council has the final oversight on the budget, so this will all come up again with us after the mayor has done this revised budget. We'll be right back to normal.
Richard, when this fiscal year is over, when 2020 is over, at this point, do you have any way to anticipate what is going to be in the general fund and any surplus or deficit?
Well, at the end of 19, we should have a $2,178,000 available fund balance. There's a $73,000 adjustment that had to be made for an uncollectible receivable regarding the Champlain Valley Transportation Museum. Originally, I told everybody it's going to be $2,262,000, but take $73,000 off of that, so $2,178,000 roughly. What I have right now for numbers projected for all the payroll accounts, all the expense accounts, and what I know is going to be happening with well, the sales tax is actually still in there at $1,300,000 loss for the year, and the game fund is still in there for a 25% loss for this year. All things considered, going through it 4 times now, I've come up with about a $370,000 deficit without recognizing a $340,000 reduction in our retirement billing that's anticipated because I've got the estimated bills from the state, and they're saying the $340,000 less than what we budgeted for. They gave us a projection. We used that last year, 2019. This year, they're saying the estimate against the projection is going to save us $340,000, of which $317,000 is related to the general fund. And the reason that's so large is because that's where the police and fire expenses are, and that's where the retirement expenses are. So you take the $371,000 that I'm saying we have as a projection for the loss, take off the $317,000 once we get that final invoice, be about $60,000. And then if we only lose half of the sales tax, which is my estimate at this point, you're going to add back $622,000 there, so you're going to be at about a $600,000 surplus at the end of this year.
To the good.
To the good. The projection we have in there for $1,300,000 in sales tax losses just isn't materializing so far. We have to lose that $1.3 million from now until the end of the year. But we actually collected at the end of June half of the budgeted sales tax of $4,275,000. So I'm anticipating half of that sales tax will be lost from now to the end of the year. So that's going to add back $622,000 to the projected figures I have. So I think we're going to be in the black at the end of 2020. So if that adds $600,000 to the $2,178,000, you're going to be at $2,678,000 for available fund balance at the end of this year to be used for budgeting for 2021.
And for 2021, I would reiterate that we would like to deliver a significant tax cut to our taxpayers. And that will also preserve our fund balance so that going forward, we should have a healthy fund balance. It will also address the structural deficit that we face every year. If you recall, in May, we discussed our 5-year plan, and we are trying to deal with the niggling problem that comes every year when we look and see, okay, we've made all these budget adjustments, and we are still left with a structural deficit of roughly $1 million every year. So this will finally address that structural deficit and allow us to balance our budgets for many years to come. And that would be the greatest advantage, I believe, that we could provide to our taxpayers in our city, a balanced budget and lower taxes. If we can bring the tax rate in to about $9.90, then we're competing with cities like Watertown and Glens Falls and Saratoga, who have much lower tax rates than we do. But this would make us competitive with those cities in the eyes of developers and make us more attractive for future development. So
Did you say Watertown and?
Glens Falls,
Glens Falls.
Saratoga, all of those cities have lower tax rates than we do, significantly lower. So we're gonna kill a lot of birds with one stone here. If we can reduce spending by this much, you know, we provide a balanced budget with continued surpluses into the future. We deliver a significant tax rate to the taxpayers, and we finally solve our structural deficit. And those are three marvelous things for all of us to leave as a legacy for the future. Does anybody else have any other questions or
Well,
comments?
I just wanted to add something, I mean, it's something that we kind of all tend to forget, but the other big component of tax increases, and that probably takes care of all what you're talking about, but when assessments go up, and I've talked to a lot of people that have gone up 15 or 20% in the last couple of years, so you call it a tax cut, but that becomes the tax increase in what you actually pay in your bill. So that's the other component, you kind of tend to forget about that, it's not strictly tax rate. You also pay on the changes in assessments, and I've never seen them generally go down, so that's always there, and you kind of tend to put it on the back shelf, but it has a big effect on everybody's tax bill.
That's
That
true.
we don't have a direct control of.
That's true, Jeff. The way that we manage that in the future is more development. More development, we spread out the tax base among many new taxpayers. Therefore, we can lower taxes for the entire city. Low taxes attract development. Development lowers taxes. It's a cycle, and that's what we'd like to see here.
I just want to ask a couple of questions. One, everybody's talking about lowering taxes. That's one of the reasons why I've been so active about and so positive for the special service fees. The essential fees, if we can get that, and that's one reason I want to see the charter, because I don't think we need to have always approval. It actually can become a vote of the citizens on the election ballot. And it's just an amendment to the charter approved by the population. At least that's what I was consulting with a different person on. If we went to a special service fee, you wouldn't have the problem with the budget. You wouldn't be cutting employees' pay. You wouldn't have to worry about furloughing people. Everybody's property taxes would go down by 20 to 30% just by changing the way we collect income. There's a service fee. We had a prime example here yesterday of an organization Not only is he not paying property taxes, but he's talking about how he's gonna be expanding into different buildings in the city. And everyone he takes over is not gonna be paying taxes. We're gonna be steadily increasing in our tax exempt base. And until you eliminate the freeloaders who are receiving the essential services from the fire department, the police department, public works, community development, and everybody else, you're always gonna have that problem. And the problem needs to be changed, not by looking at people and saying your salary's gonna go down, you're not gonna be doing this, we're gonna be having to lay people off. It's by saying everybody has to pay their fair share. And we can change that, and we can do it by election time. And it's a city referendum where we propose that the city of Plattsburgh changes from a property tax assessment to a special service fee. We don't need always permission, it's a totally community program. You talk about people saving money, you talk about lowering taxes, 20 to 30%. Mr. Marks has looked at it and has projected that through his property taxes, and he said he'll lose it. We want to save the taxpayer money. We don't want to do it on the back of our employees. We want to keep people rewarded for what they're doing. You need to expand the base. You need to expand the base by expansion of community development, growing new projects, or you expand how you're taxing people, or service fees. And everybody pay for their fair share. The special service fee, or essential service fee, is essential. It eliminates all this. It puts you on a positive base to begin with, without anybody suffering. And this budget thing has been horrible. I think you guys, my hat's off to you. Like I said, I'm the visitor. I'm only here a short time, and I can't believe the amount of work and time everybody's put into it. It's been a very educating experience. And I think you guys are doing a wonderful job, but I think you're also conservative and cautious. You don't want the taxpayer to be burdened, so you're very cautious. Richard, in the beginning of this year, our budget for 2021 was projected to be $2 million short. Was that correct? Or 2020, I should say?
No, the beginning of this year was a $688,000 surplus.
Surplus. But because of COVID, we had projected, the budget was changed because of COVID to project a
$2.8 million deficit when we booked a budget adjustment of $3,043,000.
right. And here we are going into the expenses that we were projected through COVID didn't materialize as bad as we projected, correct?
That's correct. The 10% increase in healthcare is actually turning out to be a 10% decrease in healthcare. That's an $800,000 swing in the general fund cost only, so that's a big number. The 35% that we were going to see as an increase in retirement costs in this year actually comes in at $340,000 less than what we had projected, so that didn't materialize either. So it's some big numbers that were estimated back in April that just haven't materialized.
Through conservative budgeting.
Right.
Excuse me, I'm gonna recommend that we continue this discussion during the regular meeting. At this point, I'd like to move items 1 through 6 to the regular agenda, so I'll make that motion. Could I have a second, please?
Just to clarify, Counselor, was,
Without item 5, right?
Without
1 through 4
item, yes,
and
we're
6.
striking item 5. That is correct. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks for that reminder, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. We will move to the regular agenda. Could I have a second on that?
I'll
motion?
second that.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes?
Okay, is there any old business? Any new business? At this point, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second?
okay,
Counselor Kelly?
yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Reed?
Yes.
This concludes today's finance meeting. Thank you.
Let's begin our work session tonight then, and offer you some time to further consideration and to deliver your various reports. If you'd like, you've got your routine reports in front of you. Any additional reports from government strategy and city operations, Councilor?
Nothing to report.
City infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
I don't have anything to do with this.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
Nothing new.
Councilor Gibbs for public safety.
No, nothing new.
Public library from Councilor, anybody speak for Councilor McFarland with regard to the library or Councilor McFarland with regard to MLD? Any additional reports? Any additional discussion you'd like on items A through no longer E, but F?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to talk about the Saranac River Trail.
Item C?
Yes, 7C. It appears as though this, as of today, is up to $3.8 million. And how much was the original proposal? Do you recall, Matt?
Based on the original capital project resolution from 2016, I see, was it 1.87 million, Rich?
I think it was 2,570,000. Let me grab that, hold on.
There were 3 different revisions from 2016, so yeah, the final resolution from 2016 was 2.57 million.
No, you're right, no. 1,870,000 was 16, and the revised cost was 2,370,000, then another revised cost was 2,570,000 and 16, that's right.
And then there were no further revisions between 2016 and 2019. And that was last August when the council appropriated an additional $588,000 based on the current construction cost estimate at the time.
Yes, I remember that. I remember all of these changes we've made on the Saranac River Trail, and it appears as though every year it costs more. I wonder if the members of the Saranac River Trail Committee have realized that these costs keep rising.
When these costs rise, does the grant money rise as well?
No, there was a set amount of grant money.
So every dollar of additional above 1.87 million is being eaten by the taxpayers in addition to our contribution towards the 1.87 million?
Yeah, grant awards don't accumulate interest based on inflation rates. It's a flat rate depending, regardless of what year you decide to use it.
Yeah, this isn't inflation though, I mean, because the prices have, looks to me like more than doubled.
Well, not being familiar with the full history of the project, I can't compare exact scopes that were originally envisioned to what we bid out a few months ago. So I don't know how much is just increased cost, how much is changes in scope. I just don't have the familiarity with the history.
One of the big scope items that was added was the demolition of the old Pine Street Bridge, or whatever street that was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the addition of the second bridge in the plan to not only replace the first bridge, but a second bridge. So those are scope old Pine Street.
So those are two bridges that bring people over to this island that is, when is NYSEG expecting to depopulate that island?
It's anticipated that they will complete their remediation of the Saranac River and the associated sections within Lake Champlain sometime within the next 5 to 10 years, at which point, my discussions with them, they would have no further use for that property, at which point they would determine how best to dispose of it, and they have told us that they would be amenable to an arrangement with the city whereby they would turn over ownership.
Somebody told us and a couple of councilors the other day that they started work on there somewhere around 1980, about 40 years ago.
I can't say.
And they've done about, what, 2,000 or 3,000 feet so far?
You're talking of the river itself?
Yeah.
I don't know the prior history. I do know that based on their current remediation timeline, they anticipate being done in the Saranac River itself by the end of 2022, with 2023 as a contingency year. And they are still finalizing test results from borings they took on the floor of Lake Champlain to determine the scope of remediation they will need to do there as well. But their general timeline, they're looking to be done sometime between 5 and 10 years from now.
Now, from what I understand, they plan to keep their operations on that island and truck debris back and forth from the mouth of the river up to that island through this period rather than build another staging facility?
Well, in Area A of the night site remediation, which is the section of the river immediately adjacent to the Durkee Street parking lot riverbank, they are hoping to complete all remediation work in that section by the end of this calendar year to avoid the cost of having to remove all their infrastructure, then place it back in the river, and then take it all out in 2021. Once they get into the other sections of the river, there would be different staging areas, largely on the eastern bank of the river, near the railroad cut.
Yeah, but I understood the plan to keep the island and do much of the work still at the island, even though they'll need other areas in addition to that. So I could be
Yes,
wrong, but
the site for remediation, where they're actually cleaning all of the material that they're taking out of the river, that will remain at the current site on Saranac Street.
so I think the proposal is to build 2 bridges over to an island that's going to be a construction site for at least another decade.
You could put it that way, yeah.
Good spending, taxpayer money.
To the tune of $2 million.
So, I have an alternate proposal, and I've discussed this with our Department of Public Works, and that would be to eliminate the bridges and take the Saranac River Trail right up Pine Street behind the police station, behind the middle school, to terminate at Margaret Street, which is, you know, sort of one of the cornerstones of our downtown. So it would be a great place for people to visit, and it could be done much more cheaply than this proposal, rather than costing about $3.8 million of taxpayer money. Could be done for as little as $1 million. So that's what I would propose. The Saranac River is actually very, very scenic behind the police station, behind the middle school. It's one of the few places along the river where you can actually see and enjoy the river. So we could actually do that project at a much lower cost, we believe. And as I said, I've consulted with the city's Department of Public Works, and they indicate that they would be interested in pursuing a project like that. And we'd save the taxpayers a ton of money. We'd still achieve our goal of getting people downtown on a walking path, and actually the walking path would have the advantage of ending at Broad Street and corner of Margaret Street, which is one of the more active parts of our city, and it funnels people right downtown. And we would have to make arrangements to get back down to Durkee Street by the river. But, you know, on examination, I believe it could be done that way, and we would save a tremendous amount of money. And the argument against that, of course, is that we're going to lose funding. Well, if we can do it in a smarter way, that it ends up with a trail that requires less maintenance going forward, then I'd say let's do it. Let's cut our losses and examine a different way to do the Saranac River Trail. I just wonder if any members of the Saranac River Trail knew about these cost overruns, knew that the price of it has doubled over the years, and realizes the conundrum it presents for the city. Just something to think about.
Well, since you asked if we've talked about it, we've thought about it. Not just.
Could you wait until the public comment part of the meeting? And there will be more discussion of this during the regular meeting, but would you please wait until the public comment section of the regular meeting, and you can get up and speak all you like.
You just asked for input.
At the regular meeting, it would be very nice to hear from you. This is the council's work session, and we don't entertain public comments during our work session. You may, however, speak freely during the regular meeting, and we encourage you to do so. Thank you.
I have a question. When you're talking about bringing the trail from the spot that it is, where it used to cross over into the Saranac Street, where the treehouse is essentially, that's the handicap access. You're talking about moving the trail from there just to the other side of the police station, which is like, what, a couple hundred yards?
The Saranac River Trail currently ends at Pine and Smith Street roughly.
Right, yeah, where the old bridge used to go to.
Yes, yeah, where the Maxmore Treehouse currently resides. So it would be very, very simple to move the trail along the same side of the river, behind the police station, which is a wide grassy area, very attractive. Then the police station parking lot, behind the middle school, and then up the hill on Pine Street, on the same side of the river as the current trail. You don't need two bridges. Tremendous savings.
You're
to
talking
be
about $1
had there.
million to pave a path from Saranac Street to behind the, to just past the police station?
$1 million.
$1 million to do that.
Actually, that would include rerouting, or, I'm sorry, rebuilding the Durkee Street sidewalk so that it's more attractive and perhaps a little wider to get down to the Durkee Street parking lot, where the Saranac River Trail Phase 3 will begin and continue. So that would be my proposal. There is no need to have two bridges. Those bridges, unfortunately, as the mayor said, go to a construction site currently. It's not a very attractive place. The more attractive side of the river there is definitely on the side where the middle school is. Another thing is, that concerns me is that, well, we'd like to have people living downtown. However, that happens. I know there's a lot of controversy about the current Prime project. I understand that, but eventually we'd like to have more people living downtown. This trail becomes very, very attractive to people who are living downtown. Do we need the bridges to serve those people? I think not. I think the right way to do it is to keep the trail on the same side of the river that it's currently on. There is no need to have two bridges. The maintenance on those two bridges will be considerable as time goes by.
If I recall, the original design that was incorporated into this price tag had people not actually accessing the Saranac River Trail next to the Durkee Street lot. It had them walking up Durkee Street and then down Bridge Street. So actually, you've got a fair amount of trailhead you created in the development of the Durkee Street lot that didn't exist before to substitute for for maybe 500 feet of trailhead you've lost because of the steepness of the bank in behind your shop. So I think that the Saranac River Trail Phase 2 actually terminated, in essence, at right behind your shop, and then was urban from there on in. You're talking about it being urban, up the hill on Pine, and then back down to get back to the river again in that newly established riverfront along the Durkee Street lot, which seems like it's probably a wash. Maybe you end up having more actual river walk out of that redirection than before. I don't know. But another way you might look at it is when NYSEG is completed, maybe that is the time to consider whether you want a bridge or two to go over there.
Well, otherwise you'd be building a bridge to someplace that you can't use for the next decade.
Well, two. You'd have two bridges to nowhere.
Could be a song.
Twice as good as Alaska.
Is that, I guess I see when you go down, well, I know the name of the street behind the middle school that runs down to the police station. That's not a fairly wide street and they're very narrow sidewalks.
Right, there needs to be some serious engineering done there, yeah.
It's almost like to do what you're talking about, it seems to me you'd almost have to make that a one-way street. And I don't know how the police department would feel about being locked into a one-way direction on that street.
Yeah.
you know,
Actually-
if you had it as a one-way street, you can actually then put a 10-foot wide path that would connect all the way up to Margaret Street. But without that, you're talking about a sidewalk essentially going up to Margaret Street. The path ending on a sidewalk going up to Margaret Street and then taking another sidewalk down
Right.
to Durkee Street. And so I think it would, I don't know, logistically, it'd be great if you could have a wider path, so you'd have bikes and other kinds of things being able to do a continuous loop here.
Right.
But, my recollection of that road is that's pretty narrow.
It is, it has been examined by the DPW. They believe they can move the guardrail a little bit to the east, closer to the river, create a wider spot, narrow the two traffic lanes slightly, because there is room to do that. And your trail can go right up the river.
Maybe you could no longer need a sidewalk on the other side and just rely on that.
That's
Saranac
true,
River.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know,
Put
I
a
think this
crosswalk
is where
in.
you're saying there's gonna be some serious work in engineering and
Yes.
$1 million. to spend.
My recommendation would be to hire a consulting engineer to just scope out for us exactly what can be done. The DPW doesn't feel like they can do that, but they do believe that once the engineering work is done, they can certainly do the paving and that sort of thing.
And the end result of next year's budget would be a reduction in debt.
Could be.
Well, not much of an increase in debt. This proposal was to further bond and borrow that money later on this month. But actually, I think we should begin our common council meeting, if I can indulge you all. Begin our common council meeting tonight, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Council Barbell,
Here.
Council Kelly,
Yes.
Council Gibbs,
Here.
Council Brody,
Here.
Council McFarland, Council Moore,
Here,
I've just got one proclamation here on this beautiful fall-like day. It's a proclamation, whereas it has been a City of Plattsburgh tradition to have outdoor concerts in the summer for our entire region, and whereas the city, county, region, state, nation, and world are all struggling with the social distancing and mask wearing necessary to save lives and livelihoods in this era of a global COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the great residents of the city of Plattsburgh took amazing precautions since the first in-state social distancing on March 12th and mask wearing on April 2nd of this year, and whereas our diligence, resilience, and progress has stemmed the tsunami of this great infection, and whereas we took advantage of the New York State guidelines that allowed drive-in type events and explored the idea of having drive-in concerts, and whereas Benjamin Pomerantz was willing to donate his time by producing, assembling artists representing many genres, gathering volunteers, and whereas on July 9th, the mayor and the city common council of the city of Plattsburgh enthusiastically supported this concert series. Now therefore be it I resolve that I'm Colin Reed, mayor of the city of Plattsburgh, New York, recognizes Benjamin Pomerantz and all the wonderful volunteers providing this drive-in concert series to the residents of the city of Plattsburgh and surrounding communities during these challenging months. I think Ben's here somewhere. There he is. Thank you very much, Benjamin. We really appreciate it. And give you
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on September 10th, 2020 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and seconded by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending September 16th, 2020 in the amount of $57,198.97 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore, seconded by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You've received your reports, and given your reports, are there any additional reports you'd like to offer this time? Seeing none, resolved the reports as listed are hereby ordered received, and any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Gibbs, and seconded by Councilor Brody. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondences or recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills ordered by the Common Council for the week ending September 18th, 2020 in the amount of $975,846.61 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore and seconded by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is an opportunity for the public to please come address the council. There's 2 public comment periods. This first one is for items on the agenda only, please.
Good evening. I'll be brief. Benjamin Pomerantz from Curbside at Harborside. Some years ago, when I was following bike racing fairly closely, the Tour de France came, and Lance Armstrong once again ended up as the winner of the race. And as he was accepting the final presentation of the yellow jersey, said with regard to the work of his teammates, "I should really receive only the zipper." And while I am not taking performance-enhancing drugs, I feel like Lance Armstrong this evening in the proclamation that you kindly bestowed upon me. It belongs to many people, and while I will not tear the paper apart, I want to thank everyone involved in the Curbside at Harborside endeavor, which was a leap of faith for many, from the artists who performed on the series to those who came week after week as our intrepid volunteers, parking cars and working the front gate and keeping the site clean and safe and ensuring social distancing took place and all of those important aspects, to the audience themselves. It's an unconventional way to see a concert, to be sure, and yet week after week we had full parking lots of people to come down to the Harborside and enjoy live music in these unusual times. So tonight in this room, I want to specifically thank the mayor for receiving my email back in, I think it was in May, which seems like a lifetime ago now, and for supporting this idea from the outset and encouraging it to come to fruition. Councilor McFarland, who sponsored the idea and helped to bring it forward, who I had the opportunity to see at our High Peaks Opera evening, who came down and enjoyed the music, and to all of you for allowing this musical experiment to take place in the times of COVID-19. One of our artists, Dan Gordon, saxophone player and SUNY Plattsburgh professor, made the comment after the second concert on the series that life is just better when music is in it. And all of you, by letting Curbside go forward, made life better in our community during the summer. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other individuals, please come forward.
Hi, I'm Luke Cyphers. I live at 160 US Oval. My taxes have increased a lot under this administration because of assessments. Just so you know, that went up more than 25% in 1 year. But I'm here to talk about the Saranac River Trail. I was just here to support Jesse Filer, who I think has walked out of the room in frustration after hearing the comments in the working session. And all I can say, I guess, is that there's been a lot of work done, a lot of planning on the trail that sounds like it's going to be torn up and thrown out in exchange for more expenditures on planning that sounds to me like the end of the trail, basically the death of it. The whole point of the trail is connectivity for non-motorized non-motorized traffic, pedestrians and bicycles. The whole point of connectivity, there are many points. How many of you during this pandemic took advantage of either the Saranac River Trail or the Gordon Bike Path? Oh, I know I'm not supposed to ask questions of the counselors. But I can tell you I was on both, and there were a lot of people in this community taking advantage of our system of trails that is so far disconnected and can be so much greater if we connect it. They were taking advantage of it for the scenery here and for mental health and for physical recreation, which has been shut down for a number of reasons, not just the pandemic. This is all going to go away. These bridges are not just white elephant expenditures. They're real connectors between the existing city on one side of the river and the downtown on the other, taking advantage of a potentially incredible space for the city, which could be developed as a new park. There have been all kinds of other alternative uses for this thing. It's only restricted by the imagination of this community. I don't know how many of you have been to New York City or Troy and Albany, where they have riverfront trails. I was just on one in Rensselaer, where there's a new trail that's put right next to a bunch of undeveloped land. It's on the Hudson River. It's beautiful. There's a slag pile behind it. No, it's not done yet. But if there's a connection there, people will use it, I guarantee you. The Saranac River Trail almost didn't get off the ground in 2011 because of construction delays, because of Irene, and because of an issue over eminent domain. Nearly scuttled the project then. I think our community is better because that decision wasn't made then. I think if we scuttle it now, if we turn away the state aid now, I'm not sure you're ever going to see anything approaching phase 3. You may as well just tear it up. And yeah, it will reduce the debt. But there has never been a better time for governments to borrow money than now. The interest rates are incredibly low. And if you believe that America is going to rebound from this, this is going to seem like a bargain. In conclusion, I mean, if you vote this down, I think it's just a huge mistake. And I think it's yet another example of Plattsburgh never missing an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Thanks.
Any other individuals like to please come address the council on items on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, please continue.
Resolved that the mayor is authorized to sign a renewal contract for assessment services under section 1537 of the real property tax law with the county of Clinton. A copy of the proposed contract is made part of the minutes of this meeting. The dates of the contract are January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2023.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and seconded by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? Roll call?
Councilor Barbell?
Yeah.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Councilor Brody?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council hereby agrees to and authorizes entering into an agreement with the town of Osceola to provide 3A chief operator services for approximately 20 hours per month at $38.50 per hour, subject to approval of contract formed by Corporation Council.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs and seconded by Councilor Barbell. Discussion. I might note that you've approved a couple of other similar agreements, and this is an effort by Department Head Rupp to extend his expertise to the broader communities across Clinton County. Excellent work, and I'm glad that we can help. It looks like at least a third, in my count, a jurisdiction that needs the expertise that you offer. And when we've dealt with this in the past, I think you've always assured us that this covers all of your various costs to provide that service to them. And so correct me if I'm wrong. Any other questions? And it came out of cycle a little bit because this is of the immediate needs of town of Osceola. Normally you would wait for the infrastructure committee to meet, but there is a timely aspect of this without any financial implications on us. Roll call?
Councilor Barbell?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs?
Yes.
Councilor Brody?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council approves revising capital project H5110.58 2016 Saranac River Trail Phase 2 to include the additional cost for completion of the project of $648,096, bringing the total project cost to $3,754,229, for which the city has a September 6, 2016 bond resolution authorizing the issuance of a $2,570,000 of serial bond debt to pay for the completion of the project. The city will have a total debt issued on behalf of this project of $1,810,363. For the project funding details, of which $574,000 has been issued in 2017, leaving $1,236,363 to be issued in 2020.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Barbell. Discussion?
Yes, I'd like to just say that I'm absolutely for this. I was for it, one of the last times this came up. I think that Mr. Cyphers, who came up to speak, made excellent points. We've invested in a large number to already, committed to this, and I think that we should see it through. And I said this the last time this came up a while ago. My son and I are everywhere on our bikes and on foot and so forth, and he's right. I was using those trails nonstop during the COVID crisis. And I just want to say I support it, and for what it's worth, Patrick just texted me and he said, I totally agree, so, anyway.
I would add that I think this is an important project for the city as well. And it's not just a path, but I think it provides a statement when you look out across that river and you see these bridges crossing from one side to the other. And I think it will be something that will become identified with the city of Plattsburgh in the long term. And I'm very supportive of this going forward.
Well, I'll just point out what I pointed out in the work session, and that is that it is possible to have a Saranac River Trail without the bridges and the maintenance that goes with them. I'd also like to remind the council that currently those two bridges will go to a remediation site that is not a very attractive place. The Saranac River on the west side, however, is very attractive. There's a parkland there behind the police station, behind the middle school, and of course you have close proximity to the river right up to the corner of Pine Street and Broad Street. So that, to me, is a better way to use the taxpayers' money. It will save a significant amount of money, and it will save an even more significant amount of money when we think about the maintenance of those two bridges over the years.
Well, I just wanted to say that, I was very much in favor of this project originally, but cost overruns have really discouraged me. I think the alternative plan that Mr. Kelly has mentioned is acceptable to me. It would save us some money, and in these times it's hard to justify the extra cost for me personally.
My question is to the city clerk, Mr. Marks. If we do not approve the budget or the bridge or the park as is and modify it, will that have a net result in reducing the debt for the city overall?
To reduce what we have to borrow to fund the project. What we'd have to borrow if we scrap it is just what we have to return to the Fed, which is $182,134.
Versus a debt of?
An additional 854,267, right, Matt, or am I missing something there?
What was the question, Councilman?
No, I'm sorry, it's gonna be an additional 1,236,000.
Yeah, that's the total amount that would have to be borrowed in addition to what's already been borrowed in order to complete the project.
1,236,000.
So that would be part of the general fund debt for the next
10 years.
10 years?
Yes.
And that's kind of like several jobs, if we will, if you were to translate it another way.
Probably good people for 10 years,
2 people for 10 years. So, and it's not saying that we can't build a bridge later on. We're not gonna say we can't make continuations of other projects may be available.
Well, if the council decides not to fund this, the $1.6 million in federal funding, which is only applicable to this project, will no longer be available. The $500,000 in grant funding from the New York State Parks Department, which was specifically for the replacement of one of the bridges, would not be available. So if we're talking about rerouting the trail from where it currently ends to the corner of Pine and Margaret Street and Broad Street, you're talking several $100,000 worth of consulting fees plus about $7 million in construction costs. So in the end, the city would be out the same amount of money for just a trail on a different side of the river, but without the bridges. And just one point of clarification on the current scope of work for phase 2. That actually includes paving a trail behind the existing police station all the way up to the crosswalk that goes into the middle school parking lot. So, Councilor Kelly, what you're talking about is included in this scope.
Yes.
So then you're gonna say that whether we have the bridges or not, the amount of indebtedness to the city will probably be the same because we'll have to pay back the rest?
Well, it'll probably be more because if we're talking construction of a redesigned trail on the opposite side of the river between engineering, bidding, you're talking 2-3 years before you get to construction, and then inflation would eat into that.
So there's no saving by eliminating the bridges, in essence?
Long-term maintenance costs, possibly, but upfront, first 10 years, probably not.
We also have to remember that we have a history of cost overruns. The $3,754,000 that we're looking at on a piece of paper today could end up being $4 million before it's all said and done.
Well, it started at $1.8 million.
Yes, it did. It's already doubled in price.
And just one point on that, there is $127,000 in contingency costs built into the low bid for this project. So if unforeseen circumstances arise and change orders have to be submitted in order to complete construction, $127,000 worth of change orders would have to be submitted and approved before the council would be called upon to appropriate any additional funds beyond what we're asking to be approved here tonight. And that's about 4% of the construction budget, which based on the other projects that we've seen over the past year and a half, the MLD demo, demo of the bank lots, that's more or less in line with what we can expect from change orders as a percentage of total project budget.
I guess there remains an awful lot of uncertainty still, not the least of which what will be in the site after the 10 years when they're still doing construction on that island. It'd be nice if we all had a crystal ball and could imagine when that would actually be a nice location to have bridges over to it and what it would look like over there.
I think the focus of the trail was always on the river, which faces the opposite way from the construction site, but it's a reasonable point.
There's still quite a mess over there if anybody's ever walked around there.
Quite noisy. I live in that neighborhood. We get to listen to it every day.
I am grateful that the Saranac River Trail has improved a lot based on the Deercrew Street work. That's one of the most beautiful stretches of the Saranac River Trail. The other really beautiful stretch is, of course, right downtown, right near here. So we have a nice continuity there, and I know the parking lot that you're building on Broad Street also has some river access along there and a trailway along the bottom of that as well, wrapping up towards where Mr. Brody's shop is. Tough issue. Seems to be lots of information, holes that are still missing in information, and a large price tag.
That's the part that I'm trying to establish. Is it a price tag or is it not a price tag? Because if I listen to Matt, you take Rich's numbers, they basically come out the same. Whether the bridges are there or not, the cost is going to be the same whether we have the bridges or not. The only question is of maintenance in the future. Is that correct?
Well,
Yes.
Steve, people like to divide things into compartments, okay? And by that, I mean, we can say, well, geez, some of this is covered by grant funds. So that certainly makes it more affordable. And, other people say, well, okay, we've got highway funds, federal funds, we've got a reserve fund we've already set aside to pay for this. So therefore, it's not costing the taxpayers a whole lot of money at all, but that is wrong. It's costing the taxpayers close to $4 million when it's all said and done. The taxpayer doesn't have a wallet that says, this wallet here is federal funds, this wallet here is state funds, this wallet over here is city funds. No, the taxpayer has one wallet. They pay for it all. And the question is, well, does it make sense? Does it make sense to spend $4 million on a walking path?
So I would only point out that we have already invested a fair amount. Matt, how much have we invested?
$593,000, which would be a sunk cost should construction of phase 2 not be completed, plus an additional $182,000 in federal funding, for which we have already been reimbursed, which if construction were not to be completed, the city would have to give that money back. So,
Okay.
Councilor Brody, if you're looking at the difference between one option, being Saranac River Trail on this side of the river versus the bridges, if you went with the option on the other side of the trail, you would also have to factor in that $593,000 in design costs, plus the $182,000 that we would have to get back, because that wouldn't apply to a newly designed trail.
Right, so we've invested a large amount of money. We'll have to give back some of it, or a portion, if we don't vote for it. A new trail would require engineering and other costs, plus the $1 million that we say in construction. This is to issue the bond for $1.2 million and some change. I understand that there would be future costs with maintenance of a bridge. But we have the money invested now, and we have the resolution in front of us to go forward with this project as we have committed to it. And I think we should just move to a roll call vote.
I have one more thing to say before we do that, and there's this fallacy that we've already sunk money into this. It is possible to say at some point, let's cut our losses. Let's not invest this amount of money in something that can easily be done at a lower cost. So I'd like for you to remember that, maybe not on this project, but going forward, there is no shame in cutting your losses. There is no shame in cutting your losses. And in this case, I would say this is a good time to apply that principle.
So a no vote would result in cost savings initially to the city and would result in possibly saving jobs. Is that correct?
No,
Yes, that is correct.
not really. Not if we're saying we're going to go ahead at some future point and commit to making, building this path anyway. There's still going to be $1.2 million and a little more in investment.
Well, we don't know, that's my problem, we don't know how much it'll cost to extend the trail up Pine Street. I mean, there's been some numbers thrown out, but I'm not confident in any of them yet. And do I want to hire an expensive Saratoga engineering company to analyze that for me? No, not really. I'd like to at least have some local talent telling us how much it's going to cost us to look at various alternatives. We're flying blind here. We're making huge decisions with many, many zeros on the end without having adequate information. And this thing, since 2016, has gone up from 1.8 to $3.7 million, doubled in price. And each one of those increases, each dollar is on the taxpayer. It's not on Albany or Washington, D.C. It's on the city of Plattsburgh taxpayers at an incredibly vulnerable time. I really would love to see 2 bridges across once we know what we're going to actually do in that site and have a plan. and know that the across the way is gonna be attractive and people are gonna want to go across there. I don't think anybody's gonna wanna go across there right now because it's noisy and it's dusty and it's a construction site. You're taking two bridges right to the middle of a construction site right now and for the foreseeable future. So it'd be nice to be able to just transport up 10 years and know that that's all done and make the investment then perhaps.
Just one point, the increase to the taxpayers' debt service since the beginning of this has only been $1,436,000 because the federal funding and the works funding for the bridges is in there at $1,009,000. So this is, the whole 3.7 million, 3.8 million isn't on the taxpayers' debt service. Only $1,810,000 would be the total at the end of the day.
That's something like a quarter of our entire bond issue right now.
It's a bit of change.
Yeah, $1,236,000 is what has to be added, but the certain number is if you just say scrap the project, all we have to do is borrow 182 to send it back to the Fed.
Versus being in debt for $1,262,000 roughly.
1236, yeah.
So we
Save
save
the
money,
difference between the two.
and that can lead to saving jobs.
No.
Two people.
Whatever we have is false.
Just one last comment. There was a 45-day clock put on these bids. Currently, we're at day 23 or 4, so if there's any additional information the council would like, if you would prefer to table this for a week, I can gather anything else that you...
No, I think we should move to vote. I mean, this has been delayed. I think we need to vote and go from there.
Are you calling the question?
Yes, yeah, move the question, call your roll call.
Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
No.
Counselor Moore?
With reluctance, no.
So it's 3 noes and 2 yeses, so it's defeated. Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the construction contract for Saranac River Trail Phase 2 be awarded to the low bidder, Luck Brothers, Inc., in the amount of $3,098,501.31 and authorizes the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Discussion?
You gotta move it first.
Oh, it's moved by, I see nobody willing to move, presumably because this is relatively new to this point.
Yeah.
It's not moved.
Council needs to, then, I'd suggest you address it.
Move it down.
Yeah, based on the prior resolution.
Do I have a couple of movers willing to move?
Sure.
Move by Councilor Moore and a second by Councilor Barbell. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
No.
Counselor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Gibbs?
No.
Counselor Brody? Was that no?
No.
Counselor Moore?
No.
Item 7E was withdrawn by Counselor Barbell on the Finance Committee agenda. Resolved that the Common Council hereby encourages the mayor to present a revised budget for 2021 prior to October 8th of this year, providing that the 2021 general fund budget be reduced by at least 10% overall with reductions in wages and salaries, primarily through retirements, and that total no more than 5% of the general fund budget.
Moved by Councilor Barbell, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion? This is a continuation of discussion presumably from your work session. I might add, you'd had, I think, a previous resolution that offered me less flexibility in figuring out how to do this. So I think this gives a wider latitude of things we can explore to meet these goals. So I think that's a good thing, because obviously I'd like to see this done by primarily through attrition. I think some of you talked about early retirement incentives, some of the things we worked out in our previous efforts to reduce the 2020 budget with some success anyway, especially from water and sewer. So that would certainly be the tack I would take.
I too am happy that these reductions in expense can be covered through retirements. We don't like to think about the possibility of having to lay off employees. So if it can be done through retirements, that's great. I also think the council should look at the possibility of offering incentives for retirements for those employees who are close, those who are very close to retirement. Perhaps there's something we can do monetarily to help those people go ahead and retire. That would be a big advantage to the city at this point.
Other steps you've all taken was to impose a soft hiring freeze for the last little while. And Councilor Brody, you might have not heard this before, but one of the looming liabilities over the city of Plattsburgh is something called OPEB, other post-employment benefit, primarily our healthcare for retirees, which represents, I believe, the largest part of our healthcare costs in the general funds actually to retirees and not to active employees. And I think the total liability to the city of Plattsburgh and its taxpayers ultimately for OPEB is somewhere around $175 million, of which there's discussion now to make municipalities put reserves aside for that amount. And that's one of the hidden costs, or also one of the hidden savings sometimes when, as you've done, imposed hiring freezes in slowly reducing the size of the payroll, it reduces that $175 million proportionately as well. I just can't come to think of that when you're talking about some of the reasons why we might want to expand our tax base and have other groups pay for it. When we talk about property tax revenue of around $10 or $11 million per year, that just absolutely pales with the looming $175 million over our heads, and other municipalities too, but particularly over ours because we offer a type of benefits package to our retirees that isn't commonly offered in the public sector in other areas of the country, although certainly is not uncommon in this state.
I would just like to add with this as well that I don't remember the exact date of the meeting where we suspended a special session where we were actually coming in and looking at conducting a reduction in force with our city employees. And that suspension, after that suspension, I made a statement that this does not mean that there may not be reductions in employees in the city of Plattsburgh in the future. And a lot of the committees have been looking at the various departments in the city and looking at how do you institute program efficiencies that lower the cost and maintain the services and maintain essential services to the city. As Richard has indicated, this is not a deficit situation that we're looking at in this year's budget. I believe that we will come out of this without a deficit. But where are we going to be in the next year is the issue. How do we look at, are there programs that should be reduced because the staffing doesn't require that amount? Are there efficiencies? When Richard and worked a week ago, or the last session, we passed a way to automate some of the bill paying in the finance department. Not all of it, but a piece of it. That's going to increase efficiencies long term in the city. And the question is, we want to look at, are there other opportunities for efficiencies in the various departments within the city? Do we want to bring that information back and look at those key areas and make sure that it's done based on some careful thought and analysis of what's going on, not an across-the-board cut to agencies or departments, or it's looking at, here's the rationale for any reductions that need to take place in the city that will enable us not to get rid of services, but to come back and do the services that we believe are most important to the city. And this is I don't know how to put it. This is a signal to the community and to the city departments And there was a meeting earlier today with department heads. We want to let people know that we're taking a really hard look at this in the next couple of months. The mayor's going to give us his ideas, he's going to give us a different budget, it's going to come to the council then to look at what they're going to do with that budget. And, you know, we've been accused in the past of doing behind the scenes cuts and then springing them on people. We're not doing that now. We're talking out loud that there are going to be some very hard decisions that are probably going to be made before the end of this year. And we're going to do them in the most reasonable way that we can find. So we're alerting people, and we're going to be looking for advice and input, just as we heard this afternoon from the department managers. They're seeking an ongoing set of conversations to say, is what you're proposing correct? Is there modifications of that? Are there different ways to think about it? And that process is going to go on before a decision is made on any kind of layoffs, any kind of incentives for retirement, those kinds of things. So I just want to make clear that we're not doing this because of a deficit. We're doing this to kind of get the city in line with the resources that are coming in terms of taxes and the services that we need to provide to the community.
Further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
No.
Counselor Brody?
No.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
3 yeses, 2 noes, it's done.
Three.
3 yeses, 2 noes. So it's not
Okay.
4.
Counselor McFarland's not here, so that's not affirmative vote. We need 4 affirmative votes to pass. So we tie it up.
I'm willing to go through this exercise, revise my budget.
So you voted yes?
Mhm. No travel requests at this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration?
Excuse me just a second. This is, there's only 3 noes and 2 yeses on the Senate roof
But McFarland wasn't here,
right?
so
So
that's
it's
4
no.
no.
Okay,
But the
sorry.
30, like, Jeff.
Yeah, there's 3 noes and 2 yeses.
But,
Okay,
yeah.
just want to double check. Sorry.
Any resolutions for initial consideration? Any new business or council reports? This is now an opportunity for the public to please come address the council on any issues of mutual concern. And please be mindful of the 5-minute limit. Please come forward.
Can you say it a little louder, Mayor? There's just people outside.
I'm sorry, this is the opportunity for the public to please come and address the council on any issue of mutual concern.
Does anyone want to speak for Apple? No? Sorry.
Jason Keeble, I'm the Ashland Union president, as most of you already know. Mr. Barbell, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for saying what you did say about being transparent and having the out loud conversation. I do appreciate that, because the last time I had 60-something people that didn't know they were either being laid off or furloughed, and they had to find out on YouTube, which isn't really the right way to go. A lot of disrespect there, and I do appreciate that. I do want you to know that when you look into these budget cuts that are coming forward, and you know, nothing goes without rumors. There's already rumors out there. I want you to take a hard look at these departments, because some of these departments that you're thinking about cutting from what I understand, they've already been cut. The outsourcing of what you did last week, as far as the bill pay and that sort of stuff, outsourcing union work to displaced workers, as far as a union standpoint, I'll put it this way, it's just not going to fly. That is going to be a grievable issue on our end. That's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, I hope you take a hard look at what it is that you're cutting and who it is that you're cutting and the combinations and the different things that you plan on doing. You know, a lot of these people have been here for a long time, done a big service, so it's a hard decision to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other individuals like to please come forward?
Good evening, counselors. I was out of the office last week, so I didn't pay attention to last week's council agenda. My issue, my mistake. I was unaware that last week the council was voting on local law P3 of 2020, the revised rental registry law. I just wanted to voice my concern and displeasure that that law was revised with a coalition of landlords behind closed doors without any voices from tenants being involved in the development of that law. I think that was a missed opportunity to hear from the voice of somebody or anybody that represents 62% of our population in this city. It's a law that directly affects tenants, and they should have had a voice. I hope that you take 5 minutes to pat yourselves on the back for accomplishing something, because it is a necessary step, and I do appreciate that this law was passed in general, but I do hope that you take time to revise that law and go further with it and recognize that your work with it is not yet done. Thank you.
Any other people like to please come address the council?
Anybody here?
Hi, how you doing? My name's TJ Rabideau. I'm the union president of the Plattsburgh Police Department. Obviously, I know Jason Keeble just came up here from Public Works, and I'd like to approach the council also and explain to you guys, you're going to have to take into consideration a lot of things. One thing that I'd like to notice is that your agenda switched between this morning and this afternoon. This morning basically stated there was a $900,000 cut to public safety. That's me, that's the fire department, and that's the building inspector's office. This time and age, I don't think that, especially with the way everything's working in the economy, I don't think cutting $900,000 from your public safety is going to be a great option. This is not the time to say, which firefighters, which police officers, and EMTs can we lose or afford to lose. I don't think you can afford to lose anyone. Everyone here in this room obviously knows that there's a lot of issues that are going on in the economy, especially with police, the reform that's going on. I know your public safety committee, I don't think would want to see the police department cut and us working on a shoestring budget over there in order to get things done and reformed the way that the governor and everyone else is looking to get done. Besides that, obviously you say you're looking to reduce our budget. It's already been reduced. I'm pretty sure we're working on bare bones as it is. We've had several people, obviously I know, that have left from the union. We've had management jobs that have left. This is not the time to see how many more people can we cut from over there. As it is, we have one chief and no other managers over there. So I don't know how you'd either promote or how you'd get someone else to fill these spots when, like I said, we're already working with a bare bones budget. Not hiring people back that have retired, so we're losing the skilled workers that we already have if they've already retired. Not hiring anyone else to come in just puts you back at a deficit, knowing that it doesn't take a day or two to get a new police officer in there. Our next academy probably wouldn't run till June. It runs for 6 months. They have to have field training after that. Obviously, when they hit the road, they're a cop, but come on, it takes several years to get used to the job. It's nothing you can pick up today and just say, run with it and go with it. It takes several. I've been on a job for over 16 years now, and I learn stuff every day. That's just my my information towards you guys that hopefully you take into consideration and look strong and hard at it. I mean, it is public safety. This is nothing. No one wants to sit there and have to worry. Why they're sitting in their home, what's going to happen to them or not. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and have a good night.
Thank you.
I just want to address the police department because I see that if you guys really cut them back anymore, you guys are putting yourselves in danger, you're putting everybody in the community in danger. These officers don't have enough at the force right now as it is. Just listening to everything that's going on. One of the police cars is a piece of junk that, I seen that. And like I'm going to say, and I'm going to bluntly say it, that if you guys cut the police department or cut the fire department, I'll go to every one of you guys' houses and stick signs out in your front yard so if something happens, they go past your house because you guys cut them.
Any other individuals, please come address the council.
I just have a very brief comment. I think it speaks volumes that one of your council people left before the public comment. And I hope she remembers that at election time. Thank you.
Any other members, please come forward.
Hi, friends. My name is John Seaton. And listening to, the hard decisions that we have to make here. A lot of people, we live here because of the quality of life, and that means a lot of things to a lot of people. And the bike path was one of those little gems. I remember as far back when the community development person was Rosemary Schoonmaker, if you've been around long enough. She was one of the first people that really pushed the idea of a bike path and the continuity and the connecting. The whole thing with Prime and pushing the idea of not using a car and being pedestrian friendly and using your bike seems to be the complete opposite of the argument that's being made for not having the continuity of this bike path and adding to the quality of life. So it's unfortunate that, again, we live in an area of squandered and missed opportunity, so I guess we'll just add that one to the missed opportunity. The other thing I would like to talk about is, we're talking about saving money. And it seems every time we turn around or open up the newspaper, there's a lawsuit about something. And years and years and years of lawsuits and money being flushed down the toilet, fighting with the fire department. There was hundreds of thousands of dollars flushed down the toilet, in which pretty much every time the city of Plattsburgh lost in that lawsuit. There's lawsuits going on right now, and there's probably going to be more lawsuits coming. The fire department, when you talk about life safety issues, the police department, God, when you're in your worst moment and your world's falling apart and your house is on fire, or somebody's trying to break into your house, you just can't be thinking about that when you need somebody, they're not going to be there. It's a huge, huge issue that should not be treated lightly. We have money to flush down the toilet for all kinds of things. We're spending $2 million on a parking lot that we've already had a parking lot. I mean, the list is as long as my arm, but the way that we waste money or foolishly, it's easy to spend $100,000 on this consultant, another $100,000 on this consultant. It's heartbreaking and shameful that you live in a community where we get less and less service. We were in financial difficulties before the pandemic. Now you put the pandemic. It's not getting the help from the feds to trickle down to the state to help us in the city. We're between a rock and a hard place. We all know it. That's where leadership comes in. That's why you're sitting there. That's why we put you there, for leadership. I think we really need to take a good hard look about the things that are most important. The last thing I want to see, more frivolous fighting and lawsuits with the fire department. You start letting police departments go, I imagine there'll be a lawsuit there. Instead of frivolously spending money on things that the community clearly don't want. Mike said it very eloquently earlier. It's not shameful to say we made a mistake. It's not. It's an opportunity to vet and get the best for our community. I said that a couple of weeks ago. We wanted development in the parking lot. As it's presented, it's not right. Could it be right? Absolutely. But it's not a shameful thing to say, we made a mistake, we can fix it, let's make it best. But boy, when you're making decisions, the thing that should be in the top of your brain, is that a lawsuit where we're going to flush more money down the toilet? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals, please come address the council.
My name is Joe Jansen, and I would like to follow up on what John had to say, in part because one of the things that the council seems to do is to be very good at making decisions in a vacuum. And I would suggest to you that it would be a cost savings measure if you would go out and talk to the people who will be affected by your decisions prior to making those decisions. I can name several things. I am a resident of Cogan Avenue, and most of us on Cogan simply wanted the street repaved, period, the end, a cheaper solution than digging it all up and redoing all the infrastructure underneath it. If you had gone out and done your homework and talked to people prior to making the decision of how you were going to handle it, you wouldn't be sitting there listening to everybody streaming in afterwards and complaining about what the decision was. Likewise, it seems that most recently you took a look at SROs and said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And you've had a string of people coming in here saying why they are a good idea for our community. Perhaps not all around the country, but let's ask the people of Plattsburgh first. And hopefully that will reduce the number of lawsuits that you get involved in and the number of pushback, or the amount of pushback that you're getting from the citizens who don't like your decisions because they weren't consulted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other individuals, please come address the council. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Kelly. Roll call.
Counselor Barbell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Brody?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you, folks.
So is the house up their house, or the other ones.